Today we're going to take you through the foolproof method of milling stock. And the purpose of this is to make your material nice and straight with 90-degree edges, ends, and surfaces. Okay, so to start with milling, what we need to do is we need to actually cut our piece of material to rough size. So when you grab a 2x4 or a piece of hardwood out of the back, okay, you want to, for your first cut, you want to cut it an inch longer than what you require. So if we need to cut it 24 inches, we'll cut it 25. So measure from the end, make a tick and an X. Don't use your square yet at this point, we're just rough cutting. Now, a couple things you have to look at before you actually cut it is you have to find your crook and your crown on your piece of wood. So I've got a really good example here. Okay, mark your crown, the crown's the part that comes up. Mark your crown with this arrow. Okay, your crook is the other side. This is the bottom's the dangerous side in this case. Okay, your crown's the dangerous side. You do not want that against a fence. You want your crown against the miter saw fence. So once you establish that, and the way you do that is you look down it, and you look, hold it flat, and look down the edge to see if it curves. And this one's quite evident that it curves out on this side. Okay, that's your crown. That side is going to go against the fence of the miter saw, like so. Okay. Next thing you have to look for is you have to look at it in this fashion on edge and find the part that is convex. The convex side goes down. So this piece, we have to have our crown against the fence. We have to have our convex surface down on the table. I'll show you the exact opposite of what you want. The way you know it's wrong is that you have a gap underneath. Okay, so you have space between the bottom of your material and the table, and you have space behind your 2x4 and between the fence. What's going to happen if you cut that? It's going to bind on the blade and it's going to kick back. That means the saw is going to come flying back at you really fast typically, and it scares the bejeebers out of you. Anyhow, you want to limit that. So we want to cut it 25 inches, 1 inch longer than what we need. Now that's just for example. You'll all be cutting different lengths. You want to look down your board and you want to find, down where you're cutting, you want to find your crook. Now this one, the crook is on this edge. So we're going to put a big arrow, okay, like so, pointing towards the crown. Okay, so that's done. Now we can see that it's tight against the fence. Okay, there's no gap between the fence and the 2x4. However, on this one we have a gap underneath. Okay, so that's the wrong side down. So we want to maintain that our crown goes against the fence, but we have to get this surface down onto the table. So in this case, for this particular piece, we're going to have to flip it over, like so. Again, our crown is still there. Measure our 25 inches. So put a line at 25. Mark an X on the waist side. That's really important so you don't cut it 3 millimeters too short. 3 millimeters is the thickness of the blade. Take it, put it up against the fence, and you can see now that we don't have a gap underneath here. We're going to line it up, so get a tooth right to your line. Now, hand positioning is crucial. Left hand over here, okay, holding your piece firmly against the fence and down against the table. Once you get the pressure on it, don't allow it to wobble or anything like that on you. Pull your saw forward, okay, push in the lock, push in the trigger. Wait for the blade to stop before you lift things up. So this is what we're going to start with. Okay, that's our rough cut piece of material. And now we're going to go on to the next step, which is actually step 1, and it is preparing the faces. Okay, now we're ready to joint one face of this, and we do have to find a particular face. So hold it in this fashion, look down it. You want to find the concave, the one that curves concave, the side or the surface. So that's this side. Mark across a bunch of lines, okay, not scribbling like that. Go all the way across horizontally, like so. Okay, that's the surface that we're going to joint off first. We're at the 6-inch jointer. Okay, we have our push stick and push paddle. Going to adjust the fence so that we have enough room to get our material on without having too much blade exposed. Once we establish that, tighten the fence back up. Put your material with those lines, put that down onto the bed of the jointer. Push paddle at the front, push stick at the back. Turn it on. Now you don't have to apply a whole bunch of pressure, but just keep pressure down. Before you turn it off, take a look at it, and you can see that we still have some lines up here. That means this board isn't quite flat, so we'll give it one more pass. And we can see that all the lines have been removed. That means that this piece is now nice and flat, okay? Much more flat than this one that we haven't jointed. And eventually, what we're going to do, our next step, is we are going to take this over to the thickness planer, and we're going to plane this surface down so it is perfectly flat and parallel to the underside of the surface. Okay, we're now going to finish off step one. Okay, we flattened the one side on the jointer. Okay, now we're going to do this surface here. So again, put lines on so you know when it's flat. So horizontal lines all the way across. Okay, measure, and it's not a bad idea to measure it in a couple places, in metric or imperial. So this is 35 mils. So I'll write that down, 35 mils. Down at this end, it's about 37 mils. Now with thickness planers, the rulers aren't always accurate. So we want to err to the side of caution. We want to make this 3 millimeters larger opening than we require. So we're going to go to 40 mils. Right there, okay? Now, we can put it through. This is a tricky switch on this planer. Okay, let's see, maybe it'll start. Nope. Hold it down for a moment. There we go. Hold your material from the edges, okay? Don't go like this. You don't want to squish your finger into the table. Take it and put it in. Okay, push it through. So, it didn't take anything off, and that's good. So we'll wind it up half a turn clockwise. So from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock. You're starting to grab a little bit. Okay, I think on this one it's going to start planing. So another half a turn. There we go. At least it's grabbing the piece of material now. Now we know we're getting close to cutting. To 12 o'clock. You can hear it starting to cut, being pulled through. There we go, it's starting to plane off the top surface. you can see it start to take off some material right here. That would have been our thicker spot. That was 37 mils. Now we're making some progress. Okay, and that's all it needs right there. You can see that all the lines have been taken off. So typically if we're going to laminate a piece of material, we're going to make a tabletop with a whole bunch of these pieces. We keep the material as thick as possible. If we have to take it down to a particular thickness, now's the time to do that. That's if we're not laminating. So we're right at 35 mils. Let's take it down to 33. Notice that I always check with a ruler. Always check with a ruler. Don't trust the ruler on the thickness planer. They're typically not that accurate. Measure. You're more accurate than this is. So right now we're bang on 33 millimeters. So that is step one completed. Now we're going to go back to the jointer, but we're going to do our edges. Okay, so the jointer is still set up from when we did faces. One of the first things you want to do is we want to move the fence over because we're going to be doing the edges, so we don't need as much blade exposed. Loosen this off, just put a half turn or more. Tighten it back up. So we want just a little bit of extra blade exposed. Now, you have to look down your piece of material, look from this corner down to this corner, okay? And you're looking for the crook, so the part that goes inward. And that's going to be this edge. That's our crook. Take your pencil, put lines across. Now the crook side is going to go down. That's what we're trying to take care of right now. Okay, that's the defect we're trying to get rid of. In this case, when you're doing a narrower piece, use your push paddle at the front. Okay, and there's a little arrow on here. Push that piece of material tight against the fence. Then use the narrow push stick at the back. One little line left. So push tight against the fence. Okay. Like so. Let your left hand, let that piece of material slide between your push stick and the fence. And now you can see all the lines are gone and we have a nice perfectly straight edge. And if we've done everything right, we're going to have 90 degrees here and here. So let's check that. So take your tri-square and put it with the reference foot against the edge. Look down it and see if everything's staying square all the way. That looks good. Now let's check that this surface is square to this edge. And it is. So that tells us that this is 90 degrees and that this is 90 degrees. And that's going to save you a lot of work later on. Okay? It's going to make your laminations and your work much higher quality than if this was at 89 degrees or if this was at 91 degrees. We wanted 90 degrees. Next part of this step, this is step 2, Okay, we're going to go over and we're now going to make this edge parallel with our nice jointed edge. And we're going to do that on the table saw. Okay, so now we're at the table saw and we want to rip this edge off so that it's perfectly parallel to this one. This nice jointed edge is the one that goes against the fence. So, first thing you want to do, check your blade height. We want to come up just a little bit, so loosen off the lock nut, come up about 3 millimeters. You want this gullet or this groove about 3 millimeters above the top part of your material. So that's about good. Also check that your anti-kickback call is down, and this one is. Drop the guard down. Now we're just doing a rough, not a rough cut, but a rough measurement. We're going to try and keep this as wide as possible. So we are 3 3/8, so we're going to go down to 3 1/4. Don't draw a line on it. We don't need to. We want to go to, what did I say, 3 1/4. So I'm going to set my fence to 3 1/4 inches. There we go. Make sure your push stick is handy. Has a nice little holding spot here, so it's easy to get to. So everything looks good here. Going to turn it on. Now, hand positioning, and I talked about hand positioning before, okay, is crucial. Your left hand is going to be right here. It's not going to move from this point. Your right hand is going to start at the back of the piece of material back here, and your body is going to be to the left. You don't want to stand here. Bad things can happen with kickback. You want to stand right here. Your thumb on your left hand is keeping the board pushed down onto the table. Your fingers are pushing tight up against the fence. When we go to grab our push stick, it's imperative that you hold and squeeze the material tightly with your left hand before you let go with your right. So let's start. Squeeze hard. Push stick roughly in the center. Make sure you push past this point with the push stick before you let go of the material. The blade cannot be touching the piece of material that's between the blade and the fence. Wait for everything to stop before you reach in there to grab it. There we go. Now we have these two edges perfectly parallel to each other. So that's the finish of step 2. One more step to do, and that's to cut to length, to the proper length. Okay? So we're going to do that back on the miter saw. Okay, we're back to the miter saw to finish off the third step of milling up material, or the foolproof method of milling up material. So when we cut this initially, we didn't have anything flat. We had our crown against the fence, we had our convex against the table, so we didn't have anything flat. We don't have to worry about that any longer because we flattened everything and straightened all our edges. So we won't have a crook and a crown. So what we want to do initially is we just want to re-square this end. So you don't have to mark it. We know we have an extra inch of wood, so we're going to just take off a little bit, about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters. Okay, left hand in place, pull the saw forward. Wait for the blade to stop. This is a piece that's dangerous. That's the one that gets caught in the blade, okay, and can bounce off and come flying back at you. So just make sure the blade stops when it's in the down position. So I have squared off this edge. Give yourself a little check mark there. That's your square end. Use a ruler to measure accurately. Tape measures aren't as accurate for this kind of thing as not accurate enough for what we need. We need this cut at exactly 24 inches. You can use a square on this one for marking your line, just because now we know that we have a nice square edge here, or straight edge, that we can put our square against. So there's our 24 inches. It's very important to make sure that X is on your waist side, the piece you don't care how long it is. We care how long this is, not this. Okay, so this one's ready to cut the length. Okay, and you can see cut very accurately. You should be able to see half or a little bit of that line, but no excess material. Okay, so that's cut at 24 inches. Now we're done our milling because we have all of our surfaces and edges at 90 degrees. Okay, and that's something you can check. Okay, I'm not looking at it right now, I'm just doing this so you know how to position the square. Okay, so those are all at 90 degrees. Now you can also check your ends for 90 degrees and check your other end for 90 degrees. And that is a really nice piece of milled material, and that's basically what we have to get all of our stuff to, solid wood that is, before we start doing anything more, cutting shapes, joints, that kind of thing. So that's the foolproof method of milling. It's really important to read the poster on the foolproof method of milling. Go step by step, think about what each word means, what concave means, what convex means, all of that. Be very accurate, okay, and go through sequentially, step 1, step 2, step 3. And you should meet with success, and your projects will work out really nicely.